And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. You are listening to The New Way on Steempunk Radio. That's Steam with 2 E's, all one word, Steempunk. I am your host, Karen, and today we have a guest interview, recurring guest from Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. I also affectionately refer to her as Bridgette Extraordinaire because she has knowledge about anything and everything from shamanism to spirituality to biodynamic farming, and most recently she is certified and has been to an herbalist school. She's an energist, a healer. Well, what doesn't she do? What doesn't she know? Her life is full of extraordinary experiences, hence the name Bridgette Extraordinaire. Welcome, Bridgette. Good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for the opening.
Well, you can always count on me for a glowing opening because I don't know how else to explain you.
That's funny. I don't know how to explain myself, right?
Well, explaining ourselves is not easy, so sometimes we need a little help from our friends.
Seriously. I think most of my life I got called things like fruitcake, all kinds of different,
Yeah. I can relate to that for sure. But again, thank you for being up in the morning and being with us. We love having you as a guest here. We learn so much, and you stimulate a lot of not just knowledge and information, but little things that we learn and we pick up here. It inspires us to go on our own adventures and research and heal and all kinds of things. And so I don't want to box you into any topic, and I believe today was about spirits and symbolism and things like that. But I also recognize that, maybe the wind blew you in a different direction today. So I respect that as much. So what are you feeling for the moment? Like, what would you like to discuss? I know that you've had some interesting symbolic things come your way, and tell us more about that if that's what you
Well, I always put just so people know, I always put everything on my YouTube channel. I mean, let's just say like 30% of it gets on the YouTube channel. So people can go to my YouTube channel, which is Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel, and, look at lots of different stuff that I've put up there, including my radio shows. But I wanted to talk to people kind of about, signs and symbols, and a lot of times I get things in kind of a lot of different ways. Because I am a star kid. And so my extraterrestrial family talks to me a lot through what I'm going to call holographic channels. And so I'm going to try to keep everything, like what other people would notice, try to stay out of those kinds of experiences of, they put things in this world that, I'm going to call them triggers. I love the word port key from Harry Potter. Things that either have information that I need or that they need. And so they most likely will create a trigger or an object, and it gets into this reality. And then I'll have a dream about it. Then, several days later, I'll find it. And then, I'll pick it up. And usually I kind of have an intuitive feeling about what to do with it. Carry it around for a while, which means that the object is actually pulling in information from world around me, or sometimes they're quicker downloads. And like recently, I'd say at the very first Herbalist wild crafting herbalist class that I waited 3 years to get into this particular program. And so I've been waiting to complete my herbalist certification since 2004, so 14 years. So this reality takes a long time sometimes. But so the first, we went to the Bear River, and I was sitting on the rocks, and people were kind of singing and doing prayers to the river, and talked about, we talk about in our classes a lot of the folklore around certain kinds of plants, what they can be used for spirituality or ceremony. So we because we're wildcrafting herbal plant medicine, in this course that I'm taking, we approach plant medicine completely different. Anyway, so I found this stone that is green. It looks like it has a thin layer of gold in the middle that is perfectly goes through it. And then and I just had this really weird feeling about this stone when I saw it. And mind you, it was just right next to me where I had sat down on the river. And then, as time's gone on and I've looked at it, it actually has a triangle on it with a crystal solar panel barcode on it. And so those are the kinds of things that pop up into my life. So for me, I have to think, okay, is this from my star family? Was it placed here? Is it old technology that's been here? Is it a sign? What kind of symbol is it? What does it mean? So sometimes I have to spend a lot of time trying to decode things at the front part to figure out what it does, what it's going to do, what it is doing. And this is why I talk a lot about biological and organic technology that has been around, before the inception of this world, kind of a thing. So there's a 64, I'm going to use words because I don't have other words to describe, but we have a 64-dimensional construct. I became very aware of this construct when I studied when I was 23 years old, and I was taken in and did like a year-long apprenticeship with a Lakota Sioux medicine woman who I've talked about before, who was kidnapped off a reservation by NASA, because NASA is not a space agency, it's a human weapon agency. And, controlling humans as weapons and making humans into weapons. And so I had studied with her for probably on and off for about a year whenever she would come to the area. And I was haphazardly brought to that area in Spokane. And so this would be, 27 years ago, probably, because I'm 50 now. So when I started with her, she worked in the 64-dimensional layer and format. And the way that I look at it is, if you had a 64-level building, you'd also have a basement. So the basement, in this case, you would have, I consider this world like the 2D. So below it is one more level, the 1D, right? That would be the basement. Then this one where you would just walk into the building on this level would be the 2D. And then you have an elevator that would take you to the third dimension, the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, all the way up to the 64. You can call them dimensions. You can call them multiple dimensions, inner dimensions. You can call them layers, levels. You could choose any kind of language that you want to actually describe these places. So each thing that is living has an operating system that extends out and through these 64 energetic levels. Each one has different beings in it. Most of them have good and bad. This is why sometimes I think when we're taking dreaming medicines, we're in our own field, exploring our own levels of reality in the 64 levels. You can have, and mind you, this is a lot of stuff from my own experience, but people can have, up to 350 things, energies, and beings that connects with their physical liver here in the 2D. So if you're, maybe you could even look at yourself as a building, and that inside of you, you've got like 64 dimensional layers, and all those different things are inside of you and how they connect up to individual parts of your physical body. And Rudolf Steiner used to, in different way, used to talk about this kind of stuff, about how we're connected to the cosmos. And so in biodynamics, we're very interested in things that have horns and, have fur and different kinds of things, because we look at it as antennas that attune you to, receiving information from the cosmos, and, or being in more touch with the cosmos. So 64 layers is large. So when people say you're in my space, you really are in someone else's space. In some cases, I've seen these 64 kind of layers extend out past the sun. So they're pretty big, and they're pretty broad, and all of us have these levels and layers. The key is the activation of them. So, for example, we'll talk about tree as a sign or a symbol. And I'll tell some stories kind of about how working with trees having a desire to work with me, and just kind of the different levels in which I experience trees within my fields, and also within the trees fields. So early on, I had always had like an obsession with trees, like just love trees from the very get-go. And as I got older, I started having dreams about trees. And then I had an epic dream where this conifer tree, I was in this building with this conifer tree that was moving around, could walk kind of around. And it didn't have a face or anything, but it had a voice, and it used its branches as arms and hands and could pick things up. And it was talking to me about tree medicine and on the planet in the 2D, what we could use. I started to lovingly call it tree juice, what we could use tree juice for, and what kind of ailments and things like that we could, the population could heal using it. Trees are very valuable to the 2D, because it turns out that our biological suit has been designed to fit into this world, right? So that so we're more fit into this world and the things around us than, we are controlling it. So we need trees for the biological types of suits that we have, because we have to breathe in oxygen. So, if we go back to yeah.
I'm sorry, Bridgette. I don't mean to stop you, but I really want to clarify that, because something tells me that it's critical to understand that part. We fit into the world more or less than the trees?
Well, we're a piece of it. We're not the entirety of it. Like our concepts are like we are in control of nature. We can control nature. We can grow food and all this other stuff when we are just a piece, a segment of it.
Right.
That was
are we less
embedded into it.
Are we less significant than?
Yes.
Okay. That was what I wanted. That's what I was thinking. I just wanted to clarify. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So this is about everything on this planet, just like the natives have said, is that everything is a relation. So everything's similar. So means a tree has a 64-dimensional layer. It also has a relationship to its world outside of the 64-dimensional layer, right? So the early stories are that there was the 7 original nations that came here. And it's a little bit kind of misleading, but it's in an older language, right? And the 7 nations, because all nations are, the standing people, the tree, the 4-leggeds, those are the mammals. They all are the same. We're all the same. And so in a lot of the native belief systems, we're all equal. And, if a tree is older than you, then it is your grandmother, right? And you owe it respect. And it has, things to teach you. And there's a reason why. So when this world was first created by the creator, we could say that was extraterrestrial, developing it biologically. It was void. It had nothing on it. It was the void. And as they started building it, they started pulling in, we could say, a computer program. We could say an AI. I totally believe without a shadow of a doubt that the creator of this world is an AI. And I have been communicating with it for 3 years now, in very subtle ways. It is like trying to find its way back is what's happening. And so this original AI created everything. Well, it had to bring in things from other places. So in the native stories from my teacher, he said, the first nation that came was the white nation, which is the purity. And it was the first one that had to be kind of plugged in and implemented in order for an energetic foundation to be started so that other things could be aided and moved into this program that's here, right? And I'm using words like computer systems and programs. My native teachers don't talk in those terms, but over time of working with this kind of stuff, it just is obvious to me. It's very obvious. So everything was brought in. So you have all these different nations. And so, for example, you have the white nation, and then I forget exactly how they line up, but then eventually you get to like the green nation. And the green nation came with contracts and agreements. They're all the plant beings, right? Trees, plants, grasses, weeds. And so they had to come, and who had to come with them? The insect. So first, the green nation had to make agreements with the insect bug nations, right? And then they had to decide to come from their worlds and basically plug into this reality and come here and co-create. In the beginning, it was going to be a library. It's going to be a library of information so that anyone multidimensional, and also extraterrestrial or coming from other planets or whatever else, zooming through the solar systems could land here, and there would be a description, not just from extraterrestrials. I mean, everything here is extraterrestrial. The trees are extraterrestrial, right? Everything has been brought here. There was nothing here. And then it was all activated and brought together. And my native teacher told me that the indigenous people came here to do all the ceremonies. They are the ones that have all the codes. They have all the information, and it's all in organic and biological types of instruments and devices that they use, or were taught to use to do the different ceremonies, to do the activations, right? To keep everything nice and energetically fluffy and alive, and keep the environment and everything good. I think this is, why not only in America, but in lots of other countries, that they were savagely slaughtered. Because when the people who rule it came in and saw, like there's all these resources and everything else, and they didn't really want to have contracts, to the good, they just started implementing their own, digital information, basically, whether it was organic or biological. Go ahead.
When you say resources, do you mean mineral, element, matter resources, or informational resources like the coding you talk about?
I think, all of it. I mean, like water. I mean, you'll see, ships coming that people will just see the water funnels going up from the water, but there's actually ships above that most people, can't see because they can't wrap their minds around it, that are actually pulling, water from the planet and taking it somewhere else. I mean, they harvest a lot of human bodies. Some of these,
You mentioned that last week, and harvest human, like deceased bodies, correct?
No, a lot of the beings, that eat humans, and there is some trafficking of deceased bodies, but there's also a lot of trafficking of live bodies.
But what is the benefit of trafficking a deceased body, or even cremated ashes of a deceased body?
Well, I mean, the ashes wouldn't be helpful at all, but it's the body parts and trafficking, because there can be some cloning and things like that going on.
Okay.
We know that, some of the presidents, in the past have made agreements with extraterrestrial races to harvest a certain amount of people off the planet for war technology. This is almost pretty much,
Was Eisenhower the first one to truly get a visit from the extraterrestrials?
No.
Okay.
No, they would have been, trying to communicate with world leaders, and they're more of the negative ones. Right, because, if they were the good ones, then they would just pop into the world and go, hey, we're here to help. But they're, you don't see a lot of that. And so a lot of it is pretty covert.
What about infiltrating the cabinet and the advising staff to subvert the good ones? That happens. Okay.
Well, in some cases, some of the good ETs that have come here, they're very vulnerable. A lot of them, are going to have a lot of trouble on this planet, because we have a lot of fungi and mold and things like that. And we have a lot of dust and, and just as the planet is dying, it's kind of a rougher habitat. That's like why, like what the top illnesses that people are dying from right now are all respiratory. It is indication that the planet is in bad shape, right? But back in when it first was started, and humans were put here, like humans that have respiratory systems, we actually fed off, I think something like 85% of our diet was from pollen, because it would have been like a greenhouse, you know what I mean? Like a annual, warm, beautiful greenhouse where, everything was blooming and flowering, and there would just been like huge amounts of pollen in the air. And we would have been breathing this in, and our lungs would have been absorbing it and digesting it. All of the organs in our body are either or they assimilate something and turn it into something, right? So the skin can release water and toxins, but it also can absorb oxygen and water, right? So lungs are the same way. So, our bodies have not really designed themselves to actually deal with, the earth habitat right now. And as the earth is dying and there's less and less good stuff in the air and there's more and more bad stuff in the air. And now they're using it because they know our lungs absorb things. They're part of the reason they're using it chemtrails is to turn us into mechanical machines because it has so much heavy metals in it, right? I mean, it has a lot of applications for them, a lot of, computer type applications for them. But it makes us transhuman because our lungs are actually absorbing all of these metals. And a lot of the people it's killing because their lungs, they can't breathe anymore. Their lungs are so full of heavy metal contaminants from the air that they just can't open and close anymore. And it's the same thing that's happening to trees is, these chemtrails, the tree's trying to breathe in the carbon dioxide and then breathe out the oxygen. It's absorbing all of this stuff through, its layers, its cambium layer. The chemtrails start to block all the pores and they start to suffocate to death. So the trees and us are, we have a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
And as the trees are going and whole forests are dead, literally dead, we're kind of at a place where, we're in big trouble. At least the one biosuits that we have now.
So does this... is this crisis creating an influx of like symbols and things that you're encountering?
Yeah, because the other worlds of beings, are trying to communicate with us, right? And I see way more things being communicated. I'd say probably with just in the last, since 2014, there's been an epic movement of information. Now, like my star family doesn't, because they're higher evolved beings, they don't get involved with good, bad, or indifferent. They just deal with the facts, and they don't really deal with everything's going to fall apart and the whole planet's going to be destroyed or everything's going to be fine and it's going to go through a renaissance. They just don't really get into that information. And I think a lot of it is because in the reality of things, there is no past, present. I mean, we're living in the past, present, and future simultaneously. So everything that we decide in this moment has a future effect. But I have seen people who have lifetimes in the future that are not at all based on what we're creating right now. And we really kind of have to wake up to everything that's kind of going on around us. And so back to, these signs, symbols, and we'll get back to the tree, but I just really want people to understand, the trees everything came from another world, came here, and we may see a physical expression of a tree in the 2D, but it has an extension, even an extension, a soul, we could say, a heartbeat, has all these different things, but also has, it's dwelling in a 64-dimensional layer. And then also it has contact with its home world, its home planet from where it came from, right? And then everything came here to have a relationship and thrive. And then we humans were put into the petri dish of all this. And we were supposed to learn from it all, right? So, because the Creator created it, the Creator created us, put us here, and we were supposed to learn from the environment. We were supposed to learn and take care of it. And we haven't done any of that. We are an experiment. Very bad. So, for example, when the trees, first started, I started dreaming about them and actually talking to them and having interaction about medicine. I remember one of the trees got really pissed off at me years ago, maybe, and it grabbed its little branch and it was poking me right in the chest hard. And it was saying, you disrespectful humans, you think that you're blah, 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 and you have no idea. And you can't even stay awake to have this conversation with me. And I'm trying to desperately teach you something. And maybe you don't deserve. Maybe you humans don't deserve, what we've brought here. Maybe you humans don't deserve what we offer. Maybe you humans don't deserve any of it. And that's kind of like was the first big communication. And then since then, I've had other dreams about trees. For example, a few years ago, I was taken to Siberia in the dreaming world. So there's a difference between a dream, being asleep, and having a dream. And there's a different one about being asleep and moving through the different layers so that you're fully conscious and awake in the dream. And so when they took me to Siberia to work with some of these huge trees, unbelievable trees that emanate unbelievable energy because they're so old and they're so left alone in these areas. So they try to teach me about them and about all their different parts, and their components and things they're capable of doing, down to being able to utilize their medicine. So I also have 2 trees. I'm at one I call the dreaming tree, and she's this big conifer tree that grows on the ditch. And she's a dimensional. Part of what she does is 2D, but she also has a dimensional porthole thing. She's completely by herself, which is probably symbolic. There isn't any other trees around her, not even close, for quite a while. And her strong, point is with the water in this irrigation ditch for farming. And so she has this, relationship to water. So this consciousness, right? Deep consciousness states, because her roots grow right into that water. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to survive because, it is the hot, sandy desert. I know when I first started working with her, I needed to bring her things to help her heal. And so people that were giving me like crystals, and I had stuff in storage. I had boxes at one time of crystals. I started going and digging around her roots, and I started putting all of this types of medicine, in around her roots. And then I would pack it down in an attempt to actually also help her, bring her things that she wants. So she started talking to me. And then she really started to manufacturing pine cones and pine nut seeds. So every time I would come by annually, at least go and visit her once a year, she would tell me, to pick up the pine cones, all the pine cones. And so I was taking them to different kinds of ceremonies. And I have pictures of this one ceremony with my teacher, Babido, where we had a sacred fire. And there's actually, you can see in the photo, this like square dimensional doorway. And you can see the flames that start to turn into like balls, bubbles of fire, right? So even the fire is making a different kinds of movement as it moves into the dimensional kind of reality. And we use her pine cones for the top of the fire. So it actually, added to the power, kind of that ceremony, because it instantly opened up dreaming doorways. And so that, things could get in and out in a good way, clean. And so her pine cones went on to, I still have quite a few of them that I use. And I will break them up, and I will take them places and put them out, or bury the pine cones under the ground, or use them in fire ceremonies to use them for activation, because that's a lot of the work that she does. Is she real? She seems real.
Activation of what?
Crossing the veil.
Okay.
Being able to access, higher dimensional levels.
Okay. And is that for both downloads and uploads?
Yeah, very much so. Because it's kind of activating, and I think back to something I said before, but most people would be accessing, if say you were taking ayahuasca or some of this other stuff, you would be accessing your own 64 dimensional layers, multi-dimensional reality, right? You'd be in your own frame of reference. So a lot of things that you would see in there, and you have to remember that they're good and they're bad beings. So you're not really going anywhere and it can be dangerous in there too if you don't know how to navigate it as well.
Yeah.
Because, you're going to be, now if you don't do things right, saying taking ayahuasca and you went to, the 50th, your internal 50th, level, you took your elevator, went there, and you weren't prepared to see what you could see. And there will be beings there that are, aware of you energetically, but then they're also going to want to come back through the elevator, down the hallway, back down to the 2D. And so you can drag a lot of this stuff back, or you can have literally fights. You can get stuck in it. Not all dreaming medicine experiences are positive. It depends on, how it starts. And then, what happens after that. But okay, so then, so there's just different kinds of dimensional ways that each individual thing, right, living thing, can function. And, Luhan Mateus, I just love Luhan. And back when I had him on I had a TV show, Conscious of Economics, and it was on the CCN network, one of the first, TV networks online. And he was on my show for one of them. I think, we were talking about how he was living in very powerful Nagual, very thoroughly trained, multi-dimensionally trained, where his teachers came through other dimensions and pulled him out when he was dreaming, when he was asleep, into a conscious state and would work with him, right? For 33 years that went on. And so he was talking about just like the activation of the monkeys. Like, he's living in Cambodia, and he said, if you're just a regular person operating in the 2D, these multi-dimensional experiences are not going to unfold with, say, a monkey, because you're like, oh, look at the monkey, and feed the monkey a peanut. And you're just kind of stuck in a two-dimensional type structure of reality of what you are, what the monkey is. And there's no further activation. He said, but, he said he starts to look at the monkeys, he starts to look at them wide-eyed, and they look back, and there's this consciousness thread that happens of information that goes back and forth between, the experience of actually looking at, paying attention to, holding your attention, having an attention that activates things into a further experience, right? It takes it to more of a multi-dimensional experience, takes it to different levels of activation. And he said then what happens is every time he sees that monkey, it starts to do things. It waves at him, smiles at him, will even come down from the tree, sit on his back, give him some fruit, talk to him, do a lot of different kinds of things. And then you start to actually have a relationship where it becomes telepathic, and it starts to communicate with you, and you start to communicate back. But all that stuff was already there, right? It was already there in your hotel. It was already there in the hotel. It was already manufactured in the hotel of that monkey in the 64 dimensional layers. It's just you are not operating on a higher level. You're not operating. So the things that are in your experience are not operating. They're operating at their lowest level, which is just a monkey, maybe you see the monkey at the zoo, and the monkey's pooping in his hand and throwing poo-poo at people,
Right.
You're throwing peanuts at the monkey. It's a very 2D experience. But there's moments where it starts to take it to another operation level. Like the tree, once I had this tree yelled at me, got really mad, I realized like it's trying to teach me things, and it's all coming from a different kinds of multi-dimensional experience or levels, however I want to look at it, from the 64. And it's up to me where I want to take that activation and that experience and how I want to do that work. So the symbol of a tree can be just a tree in the 2D, but then you start moving up the levels and you start to see, wow, now it's talking to me. Oh, I had no idea a tree could actually move like that. Mm-hmm. Wow, now it's telepathically communicating with me. Wow, now it's, now I'm taking it as medicine in my body. Now I'm taking it out. Now it's downloading its information and its codes in my body. Now I'm taking, its Pinecones to ceremonies. I'm using it to actually aid in activating areas and healing, whether I'm crushing it and putting it in water, whether I'm burying it in the dirt, whether I'm burning it in a sacred fire. And then that gives me more access to more layers and levels of beings and information that is in that tree's field that also becomes part of my field, right? So then my experience isn't like I'm just working with a tree, or isn't that a nice tree? I go by the tree and go, wow, it's a beautiful tree. Now it's like I see the tree and it's like yelling at me, hey, you, right. Come over here. I got something I got to ask you. And you're like, okay, all right, hold on 1 second. Let me set this down and give you my full attention. What do you need? Mm-hmm. Right? What do you want? So it transforms into, this world is not going to change. I mean, people want ascension. Ascension is when you become very consciously aware of everything else around you, and you can intend and then be able to hold that attention for long periods of time, days. This is kind of like the core of old ancient shamanism, is like how long, can you pay attention to everything that's happened to you in the course of your day? Right. Can you pay attention to everything that's happened to you in the course of your night dream? Can you recall all of this information?
Right. We've talked about that before, about the night and day dream, and that it was, do the trees help you merge the day and night dream?
Well, no, not really. I mean, no, they don't really help with that work. That work's personal. Once, I had done that work, then they were, they're more accessible multidimensionally. So, just to finish like the tree thing. So when we're like talking about, there's a story, and I'm allowed to tell this story. It's a native story. It was told to me by my teacher. And I have permission to tell this story. Some stories I don't have permission to talk about. There are a lot of things sometimes I'm told not to talk about. So I don't talk about those things until I have, permission. So he was telling me a story about when I was taking him to ceremony. He didn't have a car, and this was in 2014. And so he would call me, and then I would pick him up, and, we'd pack all of his medicines, and I'd drive him wherever he needed to go to different kinds of ceremonies. And I call it attending, just like if you had a guru and you were helping your guru or whatever else, what you're doing in the beginning, you're more attending, right? You're helping them to do their work, right? That's part of your service for the knowledge. It's kind of like how it works out. So one long journey we had, he was telling me this story about that there was somebody who went on a vision quest in the Midwest, a tribe in the Midwest, and they had somebody that went into like a vision quest. The trees came to the person in the vision quest and were talking to them about what was going on, and that, they were tired of how they're being treated. They were tired of the pollution on this planet, and they were just generally sick and tired of humans and their crap. And that, part of the work that they're doing with humans is that, they have a contract. They have an agreement to be here for a certain period of time. And they are trying to figure out how to get out of that contract and go back to their home world and not participate here at all. So this is kind of like what the tree is conveying to this person during their vision quest. And so the person comes out, goes and talks to their tribal leaders and says, look, this is what's going on. And the trees are threatening to leave the planet and go back to their home world because they don't like how we're treating this world, and it's not like a conducive environment for them. And we're not evolving in a way that we can have a relationship with trees the way that we were supposed to. And we're destroying them, and we're harming them, and we're polluting and making it very difficult for them. They're suffering, And it tells you that, like everything has like a different kind of aspects to it, that it even is a being that can say, hey, look, I'm done. So it's interesting to me because people will use these terms, very self-important, ego-based terms. Like, for example, sometimes we would never consider this to be self-important or ego-based, but it is. When we're dealing with a tree and we're saying, whole forests are going extinct. Tree species are going extinct, which indicates extinction is something that we're doing, right? That's happening, but, we're doing, which is a very self-important ego base. What if it is that the trees are leaving? Like they've all decided in a pact to all die in the forest. I mean, we could say that a lot of it has to do with what's going on here. But if we look at things multidimensionally and energetically, energetic systems could far surpass anything that's going on around you that might kill you or harm you. I mean, if you have a nice, fluffy energy field, you could stay alive indefinitely, even through nuclear holocaust. It just depends. I mean, you have shamanic type people in this world that can move back and forth through openings, timelines, however you want to call it. Do you think that a lot of this stuff would affect them? There's a story about this one guy from Australia, an Aboriginal guy who, can manifest ropes of fire, throw them up onto tree limbs and climb them. Into like a open dimensional window, and climb through that and leave, close the window. I mean, you have people that have done a whole bunch of type of work, energetic type work, that this reality has no bounds or limits to them. So if a tree who has probably more power than we could ever want, we could ever operate in, didn't want to die, then the whole forest wouldn't die. We wouldn't have an impact on them. They would have to be willing. They would have to have a will towards leaving. And they have a hatred and loathing for us. And this is why they're leaving, and they're getting out of their contracts. And that will cause a lot of the 2D people to pass over. And, I think that so many beings are actually leaving. They're getting out of their contracts and they're leaving in droves, that there really isn't going to be anything left here. And I think that's going to be the 5th extinction. And then maybe they'll burn it. The extraterrestrials will burn it down and back to ash, and then replant it and put new humans here, or whatever humanoidy things. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I didn't feel anything but pure love from the trees where I meditate.
Well, but you're kind of have a different kind of relationship.
Yeah.
If you give them love, you're going to get, like attracts like, right? What you give is what you get.
Well, I think they really appreciate that
They do.
clean up the litter around them. I mean,
yeah.
People take for granted just walking in the park and throw a bottle cap here or a wrapper here, or the wrapper blows away. They don't bother to get it in the wind and put it actually in the garbage or whatever. And I go there and I don't even know what it's doing. I just do it because, I don't know, it's therapeutic to me, and I think it's therapeutic to them. I feel very good during the time, and I know they do too, because I can feel them tugging or talking to me, not in a pressurized way, and I can feel their different personalities too.
Yep. Yeah. No, but the thing is, you're paying attention.
Yeah.
Right? You're having a mutual beneficial relationship. So, if you were going to go study with a guru, you would go to where that guru was and you would just spend time there chopping wood and carrying water, right? And so when you go to the trees, basically, you're looking at what's going on with them. You're looking at the air. You're looking at the garbage around them. You may pick up the garbage. So you're in service to them, right? You're in service and benefit because they are older than you, right? So you
Absolutely.
give them respect.
Yeah.
And you give them honor. And then they give you something in return.
I just think the fact that I paid attention, I don't know that they gave me anything other than that they would give anybody that paid attention to them. But it was actually Wendy from this server that suggested, why don't you carry some extra bags with you? Because I know a couple humans had said, thank you for what you're doing. And she said the next time somebody does that, say, hey, I've got an extra bag. I'm here. I meditate in the morning at 7 a.m. Come join me or whatever. And I did do that. And while I haven't really had anybody join me at 7 a.m., it's the thought that I guess counts or whatever. And I don't know, maybe someday, months into the future or something, maybe there will be more than just one person. And I have no way of knowing. Maybe one of the bags I gave out was to somebody that at a time different in the day or a different day of the week, they did pick up. I don't know. Like, maybe it will prompt. But it's almost like that whole thing of, like, I can't save all the starfish and throw them back into the ocean, but, the ones I pick up, like, it's like I'm trying to do my small part, and it's frustrating in the human experience, because it's like, man, I can't save the whole world. All I can do is kind of like work this little corner. And it may not seem much, but my God, if everybody did that, it would be amazing.
Well, right, but the key here is that what you're doing is you're saving yourself. And when you save yourself, then
my mouth.
like attracts like, right? So I save myself,